Hi, everyone. Namaste, and welcome to the Soul Centered podcast. Soul Centered is a spiritual center for anyone seeking meaning, purpose, and healing in the afternoon of life, in midlife, and beyond. And my name is Ariella Halevi. I am your healer through the afternoon of life. And really, our mission here at Soul Centered is to empower our clients and the community through consciously creating new goals, proactively designing new rules, and practically implementing new tools as they, our clients, discover their innate healing wisdom, live wholeheartedly, and unleash their soul in the afternoon of life. So I'm going to turn it over to my husband, Baruch, and he's going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about today and what we've been up to.
So hi, everybody. We're excited to continue on with the Soul Center podcast. Again, Baruch or B. And we have an exciting program today. We are going to be exploring in a moment a very important topic, which we're calling the divine darkness. It's a continuation of our last podcast, which was around shatterings and whisperings and shatterings of the universe, of life that we all run into, especially in the afternoon of life. We're going to go deeper into the shatterings because we all have gone through them, are going through them, or will go through them. I can only promise you one of those things. None of us will get out of this life without experiencing the darkness. The question is, do we find the divinity in the shatterings, in the shadows, and in the darkness? That's the question. Before we go too deep into it, we're just really excited. We've been setting up Soul Centered now for the better part of a year, and we just moved into our new offices in Lowry, Colorado. So if you're ever in Lowry, you'll stop by our offices and our studio. We're recording this, but I feel like we're really getting some wonderful momentum and response from you all out there.
Definitely. Yeah, it's been really exciting. And even through COVID, which was, a big change for us, for everybody, we have managed to really thrive and especially help people that are truly in need right now and are looking for some new rules, new tools, new ways of living and living wholeheartedly. And we are just so excited to move to the next level.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend of mine who's in the auto industry, and there are some industries that are boom and some that are bust. Right now it's a bust industry, but there are some that are boom. And I'd say we are in a boom industry, and it's because we focus on meaning and healing. Mm-hmm. And during a time of COVID, there's nothing more we need than meaning and healing. I think we both believe that those are the two necessary components to get through any of life's darkness.
Absolutely. I mean, I think just as a little aside, I think a lot of what we all need right now, us included, are rest. We need to leave our to-do lists and our world for a little bit. I think that's been the gift of what's going on in our world. And we just spent the last week in the mountains, in the Colorado mountains with our family. And we were really able to unplug and restore and rest and rejuvenate so that we come back here and we feel like we can handle all that the world is giving us.
It's true. And we weren't supposed to work, but I snuck up to the mountaintop behind our house and did like a bunch of videos. So you can check those out on the YouTube channel. I guess I've been outed by my wife. I didn't know she knew. Anyways, yes, we need to rest. We need to recover. And I've been talking a lot. I think I talked on the videos, but I've been talking a lot about, yes, we need to get soul-centered. But we need to get soul-centered, not so that we can just be mystics, but as Thomas Merton talks about, so we can become mystic activists, right? It's not just about going inward for going inward's sake. And it's important to go inward and take time and get self or soul-centered, but so that we can then be in true service of other, right? It's a starting point to get soul-centered. But when you're truly soul-centered, you can't help but want to go out into the world and give and serve. And that's a necessary part of the equation. But you can't go out and serve unless you really deal with your darkness.
I agree. I think that this mantra that I've been working with lately is how can, when you speak to the divine, when you speak to your higher self or whatever you call it, source, the intention to find our soul centered and our purpose in life is really to then say to our source, how can I best serve? How can I be of best service today? And every day that may change, but with that intention, it makes it almost worth it to touch into our darkness. it makes it almost not worth it. I mean, it's not really a fun place to linger in, but it makes it meaningful, right?
Totally.
It makes us better people so that we can go out and serve.
Carl Jung says, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people.
Hmm.
And right now, there's a tendency. Maybe you see this in your clients. I see it in some of our share clients and my clients. That there's a tendency to focus on the darkness of the world, and it's almost to the point of paralyzing. There's so much political realm and social realm, and just follow the stock market. I mean, everything is up and down and so intense. And there's this kind of pull almost for people to go out to the world's darkness. And one of the things I'm telling them is that it is important for you to deal with the world's darkness, but you must first deal with your own darkness. Sometimes it's tempting and tantalizing to go out to other people, which is important, but you got to start with yourself.
Very true. I think sometimes we all feel that the spiritual path or the soul path should be this linear place, this goal of I'm going to be a spiritual person. And really the spiritual soul path is multi-layered, and it's a process of ascent and descent. And so that really, especially in midlife, the idea of going out into the world and trying and being paralyzed by the world's darkness can be sometimes a spiritual bypass to turn it over or turn it around on ourselves to say, I can't change everything in the world. And if I focus on it, I'll get distracted. But the spiritual path is to turn into ourselves and look at what are the things that need to be healed? What are the things that need to be looked at? How can I heal my soul so that I can then change the world?
Don't you think that that's how you lived? We lived in the morning of life, right? Where it is really about, okay, there's darkness. Let's go out and do something about it. That's our first reaction. And, it's like you go buy the books, at least to understand it. And you go take the classes, and then you go do the work out in the world. But the afternoon of life is this realization that there will always be more to do than we can ever possibly do. Right. And we have to start with where we are and who we are before we can go running around. I mean, you have your mother of 4 kids, like if you're constantly running around putting out the fires, you'll deplete eventually.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a perfect example of something that we've been dealing with one of our kids and looking at that kid's having that child look at his or her darkness, his or her issues that she's dealing with, and then turning it around on you and saying, how does this affect me? How can I, instead of focusing on that person, but the person that you're in relationship the darkness allows you to look at yourself.
Well, it calls you to look at yourself,
right.
Not even allow. Like, don't you think? Like when I'm guiding people and they start turning towards darkness outside of themselves, it's a mirror for something in themselves that they need to face.
I agree, but this is my main issue. And I mean, I struggle with it all the time, and I help people guide them through this. This is the issue, is that it is scary to go into the darkness because we feel alone. Because a spiritual life feels like it should be one where we're constantly connected to the divine, where we're always in this great miracle state. And really, a spiritual life, what was that book? Something about doing laundry.
By Jack Kornfield.
Yeah, I can't remember that.
After the ecstasy and laundry.
Yeah, so after the ecstasy, you go and you do your laundry. And when we are in the darkness, when things are happening in our lives and we're in it, it can be a very scary place to be, because that is often not when the divine turns away from us or our soul turns away from us. It's when we human beings, we turn away from the divine. So we feel like we're alone, and it feels scary.
But part of that, in my experience, is that we've been sold the bill of goods, right? We've been told spirituality, divinity, this path of enlightenment feels a certain way. And usually it's described in love and light. And And it's like the Lego movie. I always quote the kitty, the crazy happy kitty that's just
Right.
blows up at the end of the movie. And it's like this false view of spirituality where Carolyn Myss talks a lot about it. She says this is a bunch of bullshit, right? Spirituality is going to kick your ass and it's going to lift you up and nurture you, but it's also going to be the dark stuff. And I feel like once I help people set their expectations, it's a little bit less, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Why am I off? Why am I experiencing darkness when I should be experiencing light? Why do I feel alone if I'm doing this work? And when you at least know that part of the journey is feeling lonely, part of the journey is feeling overwhelmed, at least that's a starting point that you don't have to just beat yourself up.
That's true. I mean, I like to think of when you go through the darkness, I like to think of it almost like a basket. You know, inside of us, we have this basket of darkness, the things that have happened to us, right? The loss, the grief, the death, the divorce, the illness. And we, through our lifetimes, I mean, even as, you know, if you have trauma as a child as well. And by the way, all the things that we have been passed down through generations. So I think of it as like this divine basket that we hold. But within the basket of our pain also comes this first of all, this depth that we learn about ourselves through the darkness, and also the light, you know, mixed in within your darkness. I always I always I think about what we've gone through in our lives. And yes, I wouldn't have traded it for anything. Although, of course, we wish our loved ones were here. But the lessons and the joy that we have found on the other side makes, I don't want to say makes the darkness worth it, but it's the ability to hold both in this basket. It does. It makes it meaningful. And by the way, it makes the joy more joyful.
But you know, you're not doing your mom a disservice. Like so many people feel guilty over saying what you just said, that I feel bad saying that I'm grateful for the darkness, or I've learned, or I've grown, or I've benefited from the darkness. But here's the question: not is the darkness meaningful, right? Or is it joyful or happy? Is it meaningful? And what's the alternative? It's either meaningful or it's meaningless. Right. Do you serve your mom by leaving it meaningless, right? Is her death for naught?
Right.
Or is she looking down going, oh my God, Ariella, you're amazing because you've taken the darkness and made it meaningful and giving love and light out of that darkness in my honor. And I really believe I've seen what you've done with your darkness, and it's a benefit and a blessing to your mom.
It is. And then if you look at the, first of all, think about the people who have passed on, and you're right, and how they want you to live. You know, we're just talking about grief here, but how they want you to live. And ultimately, as they pass on and they do their healing work in the next life, they want you to find meaning and to go out and serve, right? Like I think about the darkness that I've been through with losing my mom almost exactly 2 years ago. And I look at the parent I am today, and I am a different parent because of what I went through. And I look at the healer I am today, and the depth that I've gone through allows me to be there for the darkness of others. So really thinking about going inside and holding your losses and your darkness and your grief and making it worth the loss that you've gone through.
Make it worth it. Absolutely. And really thinking about, as we continue down this, what is the darkness? Why the darkness? What's the alternative, right? Because I was counseling somebody today who's dealing with the world's darkness, and she's shattered over, she just named the top 10 events that are going on in the world right now, and she's shattered. And she's shattered because she feels like a lot of the world is still yawning. They're just not that interested. And she was basically cursing her darkness. And we started by saying, but wait a minute, you want the world to feel the pain and suffering so we can all start doing something about it. You're carrying that right now. And it's dark and it's overwhelming, but it's also a blessing. In that darkness is also an opportunity, is your opportunity, is your light.
Right.
And so it's about learning what the darkness has to offer us.
Right.
because it has to offer us something, or else it's all meaningless, and this is meaningless, and there's no point of being here.
Exactly. How can you find your light within the darkness? We always talk, I mean, we've talked about this before, that when you are in the throes of life, when you're holding that basket and the basket feels heavier on that dark side versus the light side. So how can you learn and how can you grow from this period of time in your life and spread your light throughout the world? That's not spiritual. That's not like spiritual fluffiness or woo woo. That is truth. I mean, really, to make the darkness worth it, to go out and be that light. How can you learn from COVID? I feel guilty sometimes when people say to me, and of course, thank goodness, like we are healthy. And so I would never say this to someone who has actually gone through the coronavirus and people who have lost. But through the intense darkness, I mean, I had panic attacks when COVID first started. I had just buried my grandmother, and 2 days later, we went into quarantine. And our daughter was in quarantine, and we didn't know if she had corona. And I had 2 or 3 panic attacks, which I haven't had in about 15 years. And so in the dark and feeling alone and lost, I have found places of such extreme joy and deep gratitude for the fact that we are alive. And it's probably something that I felt, throughout my years. We're 48 years old, and I've felt those pockets of gratitude. But the intense beauty I found, like let's just say last week when we were in the mountains, I heard the whisperings of my soul when I smelled a pine tree. It probably wouldn't be something that I felt pre-COVID, and so the invitation is to go through the darkness and be with whatever is here in this moment. Jeff Brown, who's a wonderful author who I love, he always talks about this idea of befriending yourself in the darkness. And so befriend it and be there and feel the aloneness and feel the discomfort of it, and see if you can find this extreme light within it.
And kind of just backing out a little bit, either the darkness is by design or the darkness is random and doesn't have meaning. And I believe in my experience, my own personal experience, guiding others, studying wisdom texts from all traditions, especially Judaism, Kabbalah, that it's by design. And it isn't punishment, right? It isn't you're being punished with COVID, you're being punished with cancer, you're being punished with mortality. In mortality, we all have a terminal illness, right? And you can say that we're being punished and what kind of a God does this, or you can say it's part of the deal. And there's a reason and meaning for all the darkness that we will all suffered or will all suffer. And I draw this from, a wisdom text that most everybody knows, Psalm 121. We read in the Hebrew, Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha, that God is your keeper, God is your shade upon your right hand. The Kabbalists reread this, and it means that not God is your shade, God is in the shade, in the shadows, in the darkness. It isn't that you're being forced into the darkness because you're being punished by God, but that it's part of the universe. It's the way it is. The universe born in darkness, you're born in the womb in darkness, but that it's not absent, and God's not absent. The divine's not absent. The divine is everywhere. And that's true. But I meet most of the people when they meet the divine in the darkness.
Right.
Much more readily, either you're more willing to see the divine and experience it, or the divine is just more pronounced in the darkness.
It's true. It's true. I think also the invitation is to, a lot of us, ourselves included, you want to run away from pain. Pain hurts. Pain is not fun. It's not fun to be in this place. And we are taught in our world that, life is supposed to be fun. Life is supposed to be happy. And if we aren't happy, like you said, then something's wrong with us. But the things that the darkness that we fear the most, those deep, dark feelings that we have, the fears that we have, going through a panic attack during COVID, like the last thing I wanted to do was sit with myself and be in that panic attack. But I think about the words of Joseph Campbell when he says, in the cave you fear to enter, lies the treasure that you seek. And sometimes we have to allow ourselves to feel worse, to bravely touch into the darkness and the, negativity of the moment that we're feeling, in order to find our light, in order to remember that we are resilient and we have strength. So within that, we can touch the feelings of the darkness in order to find our resiliency.
But again, I come back to, what I said before, and that is that's divinity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is it that we tend to describe the divine God spirit as light? When absolutely, but if the divine is everything, then the divine is darkness. And so, what you're seeking, because I talk to so many people who are seeking spirituality, like they want more spirituality, but they've only defined it by the light. And sometimes when they're in the most spiritual places, they don't even realize that this is spiritual. They don't even realize that they're in divinity. They don't have to get out of the darkness to experience the divine. Start where you are and what you're feeling. And that overwhelm and that terror and that fear, go into that. Don't try and run away from that.
I'm laughing because this is where our, we're married, obviously, and this is where sometimes we differ, because what I come back to that joy, and B loves to go deep and dark. And this is sometimes where we like get stuck a little bit.
We're not stuck. You're stuck.
I'm not stuck. You're stuck. But like in the darkness is, like I've said before, is that extreme joy. Like it's about integrating. It's not just staying in it. And I'm not saying that you stay in it, although sometimes you do.
It's not about staying in it. It's about starting in it.
It is about starting in it, but it's also about seeing the complete joy that is within it. I work a lot with my clients, and I do this with myself, is that we do this visualization and healing where in one hand you hold all the stuff that you've held through, the pain of life, the pain of being human, right? And all the things that were passed down to you, the intergenerational trauma, the ancestral lineage, that stuff that's held, that is passed down, right? Some of this junk is not even ours. So you hold it in one hand, and then on the other hand, it's just like that basket that I talked about. Like on the other hand is, what is your light? We are here to remember that we are not innately dark. We are light. And yes, within that light, there is shit, excuse my French, but there is the dark. But it's an integration of both. If you put your palms together and you hold both of them, then you combine the light with the dark. It's not and or.
Well, but this is my logotherapy by Dr. Viktor Frankl. We are never dark, right? So our soul, he calls it the noetic, but the soul is always light by definition. That's what the soul is. Our psyche, our thinking, our emotions, our life is dark.
Yeah.
And our noetic, our soul, is always light. It gets overshadowed at times by the darkness. And our job is to remember that's not who we are. Mm-hmm. That's what we're experiencing. Who we are is always whole, is always light.
Right. That is okay. You redeemed yourself.
Thanks, Dr. Frank.
So I love it. And I totally agree with it. And I think that is, as a team, we always say we meet in the soul, right? And your soul is innately beautiful and light and love. And it's our job on this earth is to remember when we get stuck in the humanness and the, just the terror of life sometimes, is to remember that we don't have to stay in that place, or that we can invite our soul on the journey. Right? That's why we feel so alone, because we think in our humanness that we forget that we forget that we're the soul, and we think we're just these physical bodies. And when we look down and we say, this is it, this stuff of life, is that all there is? And all of us forget. And the remembering is that, no, you are whole the way you are. You are beautiful and love and light, because that is our soul.
And the darkness isn't there to deter you, to stop you, to punish you. That the darkness is simply there on your path as yet another discovery opportunity to return and find that light, return to your light. And so, it's not about darkness and it's not about light. It's about soul. It's about truth. It's about returning and remembering who you are, right? And where you've come from and where you're going. And these are all just stepping stones on the path.
Very true. Very true. And to bring your soul with you. I mean, that is the biggest intention, is to meet in the soul and bring your soul on this path.
And ending again with a Viktor Frankl quote, what is to give light must endure burning. And so whatever you're going through, right, it's either meaningful or it's meaningless. And we refuse to believe it's meaningless, believe deeply it's meaningful. You got to find the meaning in it. And if you find the meaning, you can begin the healing. And that's the work we do. So before we wrap up, Ariella is the healer through the afternoon of life. I'm the guide through the afternoon of life. And this is really what we do all day, every day now, is guide people through the afternoon of life. A couple of people have said to me, well, what exactly is the afternoon of life? I don't know if I'm in the afternoon of life. And there's no hard and fast rule. There's no definition. I think we've tended towards Carl Jung's idea that 40 seems to be a transformative number. It's a bell curve, some before, some after. That's the beginning point. And it's a shifting consciousness when you start to look for new goals, new rules, new tools. And so that's where we meet people, is the afternoon of life, midlife onwards. I work with people as a logotherapist. Logos means meaning, truth. And so we find meaning in life through all aspects of life, as we just discussed right now, and working with people individually to guide them, finding this meaning and this truth so that we can map out what you're going through. Because if you know what you're in, no matter how dark it might be, you can find a place to put your foothold, and the next step, and the next step. You don't have to know your way out. You just have to be willing to face it and to talk about it and to move through it. And so that's the work we do, that I do with my clients, not just darkness of grief and death, but all types of challenges. I call it, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, calls it the arena, right? Those moments when life puts us into the arena, and we know that this is a profound moment. And we also know that we need something outside of ourselves to help guide us forward. And so we'd love to work with you and offer you a complimentary consultation, as I'm sure Ariella would.
Absolutely. I work with clients in the afternoon of life to help you remember that you are worthy, to help you remember that you have this divine soul that you were born with, that you are here with, and really to help you find your voice. So many of us have lost who we are along the path of our darkness and just going through the ins and outs of life. And so I help women especially connect to their bodies and their souls and their hearts to reclaim who they are and remember that they have a divine voice and that they can use it in this lifetime. And I do this in a myriad of ways. But again, as B said, I'm the healer of the partnership, and we really do more healing work going into past lives and old issues to come back and into this present moment to heal the things that are blocking us and the emotions that are stored in the body through various ways, but really to ultimately remember who you are, remember that you are a soul. And so we close our eyes so we can remember that we are not our minds. We are ultimately our hearts. So if you are interested in working with us, you're welcome to, again, as B said, schedule that complimentary discussion, 30-minute discovery session. Head over to our email list. You can join our email list at www.mysoulcenter.org. You can find on our website lots of different information. We do podcasts once a week. We have, starting, I think it is next Tuesday, August 18th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, is a monthly Goddess Women's New Moon Circle that I offer once a month. to help you find your divine voice, to help you find your worthiness, and to tune into the energies of the month so that you can live in balance and love and truth. And you can also follow us on social media at My Soul Centered, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and LinkedIn. We hope you have a beautiful weekend, and we wish you light and love within your journey. And namaste.
Shalom, peace, namaste.